Hey guys, I've always known that President George Washington was a Protestant Christian, but recently I've come across claims that he converted and became a Catholic Christian. I'm going to share those claims with you and you can decide for yourself. But first, I want to say Happy Independence Day to all my fellow Americans and Happy Birthday, America. And I ask all you guys to remember those men and women who gave their lives for us to give us independence. And I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to serve in the United States Navy, to serve in the greatest military ever known to mankind. And, when people come up to me and I'm wearing my Navy hat or a Navy t-shirt, I'm in Florida, they love the military down here. So you can't pass a person without them saying, thank you for your service. And I tell them every time, thank you for paying my salary. It was actually a privilege and an honor to serve. The Navy did way more for me than I did for her. The Navy took a juvenile delinquent and made him into a man. So I'm very thankful for the United States Navy. And I served in peacetime, 1985 to 1989. The young men and women that have served in the War of Terror from 2001 to 2020, and still in some hot spots in the world right now, they were in constant battle. I had a guest on the show, Dr. Dale Comstock. He was a Army Delta Force operator in Green Beret the entire War on Terror. This guy's seen so much blood. It's just amazing that he survived. Guys like that really deserve our thanks and our praise and our honor. So, getting back to the story at hand, before I go into the Catholic stories about General George Washington, I want to refresh your memory, or maybe you never heard this before if you went to American public schools where they hate to talk about the truth of history. This is a letter, and when it comes to history, I always like to go to the original source, if the person, or the closest source, someone that the person was friends with. So right here we have the original source, a letter from the Library of Congress from General George Washington to his younger brother, John Augustine, written July 18, 1755. This was during the Indian War, the French and Indian War that General George Washington fought in about 20 years before the Revolutionary War. He writes, "As I have heard since my arrival at this place, a circumstantial account of my death and dying speech, I take this opportunity of contradicting the first and assuming of you that I have not as yet composed the latter." So basically, people are saying I died, I didn't. "But by the all-powerful dispensations of Providence, I have been protected beyond all human probability or expectation. For I had 4 bullets through my coat, 2 horses shot under me, yet escaped unhurt, although death was leveling my companions on every side of me." And there's a story, I've read it in a few videos, but there's a story of an Indian chief who was at that battle years later, came after the war had ended, came to meet George Washington and said, "My shooters were the best. They never missed. And I knew you were their leader, so I told them all guns on that man. And I seen their bullets go right at you and you didn't fall. I seen your horse go down. You get up and get on another horse. I seen that horse go down. I seen every one of your men close to you go down. And when you went down, I said, stop shooting at that man. That man is protected by God." And he told George Washington, "I believe God protected you for something greater. You're going to become a great leader of a nation." So these are letters, these are archived, these are true stories of General George Washington. Now, getting to his conversion, again, Jesuit archives, this letter supposedly is in. I've heard priests talk about this, but I haven't seen the archived letters yet. But they say when George Washington was on his deathbed, a priest canoed up to him, went to him, spoke to him, brought him into a Catholic church. I believe it's in Mount Vernon. And he converted to Catholicism, and it was read his last rites. Now, this is all hearsay to me so far. If you have any evidence, send it. But I do have an actual letter from the Library of Congress that kind of supports this, can kind of show why he would want to convert. So this is from a second source. His good friend, a soldier named Anthony Sherman. He told this story in 1859 when he was 95 years old. And it was reported then, and then it was archived in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. So this is the words he claimed that George Washington said to him. I do not know whether it is owing to the anxiety of my mind or what, but this afternoon as I was sitting at this table engaged in preparing a dispatch, something in the apartment seemed to disturb me. Looking up, I beheld standing opposite me a beautiful woman. So astonished was I, for I had given strict orders not to be disturbed, that it was some moments before I found language to inquire the cause of her visit, or her presence rather. A second, a third, and even a fourth time I did repeat my question, but received no answer from my mysterious visitor, except a slight raising of her eyes. By this time I felt strange sensations spreading through me. I would have risen, but the riveted gaze of the being before me rendered volition impossible. I essayed once more to speak, address her, but my tongue had become useless, as if though it had become paralyzed. A new influence, mysterious, potent, irresistible, took possession of me. All I could do was to gaze steadily, vacantly at my unknown visitor. Gradually, the surrounding atmosphere seemed to fill with sensations and grew luminous. Everything about me seems to rarefy the mysterious visitor herself. Also becoming more eerie and yet more distinct to my sight than before, I began to feel as one dying, or rather to experience the sensations which I have sometimes imagined accompany death. I did not think, I did not reason, I did not move. All were alike impossible. I was only conscious of gazing fixedly, vacantly at my companion. Presently I heard a voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." So contrary to popular belief, America has never been a democracy. It's always been a republic. And a simple way to explain the difference is a democracy, you get your rights from the government. A republic, you get your rights from God. So in democracy, the government could take away your rights. In a republic, the government can't, because the government didn't give them to you. So we are the republic, the republic. We are a republic. So, son of the republic, look and learn. While at the same time my visitor extended her arm eastward, I now beheld a heavy white vapor at some distance, rising fold upon the fold. This gradually dissipated, and I looked upon a strange scene. Before me lay, spread out in one vast plain, all the countries of the world, Europe, Asia, Africa, and America. I saw rolling and tossing between Europe and America the billows of the Atlantic, and between Asia and America lay the Pacific. Son of the Republic, said the same mysterious voice, look and learn. At that moment I beheld a dark, shadowy being like an angel, standing, or rather floating in midair, between Europe and America, dipping water out of the ocean in the hollow of each hand. He sprinkled some upon America with his right hand, while his left hand he cast some over Europe. Immediately a cloud arose from these countries and joined in mid-ocean. For a while it remained stationary, and then it moved slowly westward, until it enveloped America in its murky folds. Sharp flashes of lightning gleamed through it at intervals, and I heard the smothered groans and cries of the American people. This, historians believe, was a prophecy of the Revolutionary War. Then he says, a second time the angel dipped water from the ocean and sprinkled it out as before. The dark cloud was then drawn back to the ocean, whose heavy billows it sank from view. A third time I heard the mysterious voice saying, Son of the Republic, look and learn. I cast my eyes upon America and beheld villages and towns and cities springing up one after another, until the whole land from the Atlantic to the Pacific was dotted with them. Again I heard the mysterious voice say, Son of the Republic, the end of the century comes, look and learn. And this time the dark, shadowy angel turned his face southward. From Africa, I saw an ill-omened specter approach our land. It flitted slowly and heavily over every town and city of the latter. The inhabitants presently set themselves in battle array against each other. As I continued looking, I saw a bright angel on whose brow rested a crown of light, on which traced the word Union. He was bearing the American flag. He placed the flag between the divided nation and said, "Remember your brothers." Instantly, the inhabitants, casting down their weapons, became friends once more and united around the national standard. This obviously looks like a prophecy of the Civil War. And then the third and most fearful peril, again I heard the mysterious voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." At this, the dark, shadowy angel placed a trumpet to his mouth and blew 3 distinct blasts. And taking water from the ocean, he sprinkled it upon Europe, Asia, and Africa. Then my eyes beheld a fearful scene from each of these continents rose thick black clouds that were soon joined into one. And through this mass there gleamed a dark red light, by which I saw hordes of armed men. These men, moving with the cloud, marched by land and sailed by sea to America, which country was enveloped in the volume of cloud. And I dimly saw these vast armies devastate the whole country and the villages, towns, and cities which I had seen springing up. As my ears listened to the thundering of the cannon, clashing of the swords, and the shouts and cries of millions in mortal combat, I again heard the mysterious voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." Where the voice had ceased, the dark, shadowy angel placed his trumpet once more to his mouth and blew a long and fearful blast. Instantly, a light as of 1,000 suns shone down from above me and pierced and broke into fragments the dark cloud which enveloped America. At the same moment, the angel upon whose head still shone the word Union, and who bore our national flag in one hand and a sword in the other, descended from the heavens, attended by legions of white spirits. These immediately joined the inhabitants of America, who I perceived were well nigh overcome, but who immediately, taking courage, closed up their broken ranks and renewed the battle. Again, amid the fearful noise of the conflict, I heard the mysterious voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." As the voice ceased, the shadowy angel for the last time dipped water from the ocean and sprinkled it upon America. Instantly, the dark cloud rolled back, together with the armies it had brought, leaving the inhabitants of the land victorious. Then once more I beheld the villages, towns, and cities springing up where I had seen them before, while the bright angel, planting the azure standard he had brought in the midst of them, cried with a loud voice, "While the stars remain and the heavens send down dew upon the earth, so long shall the Union last." And taking from his brow the crown on which blazoned the word Union, he placed it upon the standard, while the people kneeling down said, "Amen." This last and most horrible prophecy seems to not have happened yet or to be happening right now. But either way, if the prophecy is true, the flag still stands and America once again will be triumphant. Now, I make no judgment on that prophecy, but these are the words of George Washington to his trusted friend. And it wouldn't surprise me if they were true. You see, because most people think Protestant Christians founded this country, but the first pilgrims came 50 years before Plymouth Rock. They were Catholic pilgrims. I could drive to it a couple hours away from where I live. It's called St. Augustine, after the great St. Augustine. That's where the first pilgrims came. That Catholic city was there 50 years before the Protestants came to Plymouth Rock. And when the Protestants were dying off because they didn't know how to survive the winter, God sent a Catholic to save them. Yes, Squanto was an Indian who was captured by slave traders and was brought to Europe. And Catholic monks were buying slaves to free him, and they bought Squanto to free him. But he had no money, nowhere to live, so they taught him the Catholic faith and they taught him English. And then he felt led to go back home to America, and he knew English, and he knew how to survive the harsh winters of America. So yes, It was a Catholic who saved our Protestant brothers and sisters at Plymouth Rock. And you say, but yeah, this doesn't prove that, is there any other evidence that he might have been thinking about the Catholic faith other than, a prophecy and, what this Jesuit said happened? Well, his preacher, his Episcopalian, he went to the Episcopal Church, scorned him for not taking the Eucharist after the war. And many people thought that he didn't feel worthy to take the Eucharist. For my evangelical brothers, I'm talking about the communion host. But he was a warrior. He was a Christian. He knew this was a just war. And even though he's Bible-believing Christian, the Bible doesn't condemn just wars. He was defending the freedom of men, women, and children. It was a just war, the Revolutionary War. So I don't think that was the reason. There's a couple other reasons it could be. Number one, he inherited slaves, but later in his life, you see he struggled with the sin of slavery. A lot of liberals that hate America try to say America was founded on racism and slavery and we're so evil because we had slaves. But slavery was normal. It wasn't right, but it was normal for thousands of years. In fact, when we had slaves in America, there were more slaves in Asia, Africa, and in South America. We were buying our slaves from black slave traders in Africa. It wasn't a racist thing. It was just a normal thing. From the beginning of time, the Jews were enslaved. In fact, the word slave comes from the word Slavic because there were so many Slavic people in slavery. The word came synonymous, and Slavic people are white. It's like modern day Poland. Polish people, there were more Polish slaves. There were Irish slaves. Every one of us were slaves at one time. No, it wasn't unusual to have slaves. What was unusual was for a leader of a country to say, if slavery isn't evil, nothing is evil. That was Abraham Lincoln's word. What was unusual was for free men to die, for slaves to be free. And that's what hundreds of thousands of Americans did to free slavery. So when I say we are an exceptional nation, we are the greatest nation ever known to man, I'm not saying we are a perfect nation. We strive to be a more perfect nation. And a nation is made up of humans, and humans are bound to sin, and make mistakes. But getting back to his feelings on slavery, he wanted to free the slaves, and there was debate. It took time. It took a civil war, which he was trying to avoid. But when he died, he left all his inheritance, all his money, and he was a wealthy man, left all his money to his slaves and freed his slaves. So maybe that was a sin that he was dealing with, and he didn't feel worthy to take communion, to take the Eucharist. Or maybe that after having that vision of Mary, they say he had a devotion to Mary, had a big picture of our Blessed Mother Mary in his room. And he would ask for her prayers. He would ask her to pray for him and pray for the Republic. Maybe he was thinking the Catholics are right. You see, if you're an evangelical, you won't even get this because you've come so far away from ancient Christianity. But from the very beginning, the first Christians, the center of our worship was the Eucharist. This is what the word means, thanksgiving. And they get that from when Jesus said, this is my body and this is my blood. If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will have eternal life. So the center of every worship service in the beginning was the Eucharist, just like it is today. It's not the preaching, it's the Eucharist. And we didn't even get any letters from the apostles until, decades after Christ died. So as the church was meeting, they were meeting to have the Eucharist. That was church, that was worship. And then if you were lucky, at one point if you were at the Church of Rome, you got a letter from Paul, if you were at the Church of Corinthians, but most churches didn't get these letters. So it wasn't a Bible-based church. In fact, it wasn't until 382 AD that the Catholic Church at the Council of Rome decided which books could be read in church, because church was all about the Eucharist. So the Eucharist came first. That's the source and the summit of our faith. And reading the letters was a part of it, but it wasn't the focus. And so the Christians knew what Jesus said was true. They believed Jesus said what he meant. He meant what he said when he said, this is my body and my blood. So the church has always believed that it literally, somehow, supernaturally, the communion host becomes the flesh and blood and the wine becomes the blood of God. And we don't know how it happens. It's supernatural. Just like God Almighty in heaven became a man. We don't know how it did, but he did. You looked at him and said, oh, that's just a man. No, it was God. He was fully God and fully man, Jesus Christ. And then it got to the point when the Church of England, they had a Catholic king in England, and just like all kings, they screw up. But he became Protestant and called it the Church of England. He broke away from the Pope. And then gradually, the Church of England changed their belief on the Holy Eucharist. And by the time it came to America and was called the Episcopal Church, they believed, somehow it turns into the body and blood of Christ, but we don't know how. And they believed more like the Lutherans, consubstantiation, than transubstantiation, like Catholics. So consubstantiation, according to Lutherans, it's still bread and wine, but inside of it is God's flesh and blood, only while you're celebrating the Mass. After the Mass over, it's gone. God's body and blood is gone. That's heresy to Catholics. We believe transubstantiation, it fully becomes his body and blood of wine, and it stays his body and blood of wine. And we believe the only way God will do this is through his priests and bishops who have apostolic succession, which means that my bishop can trace his ordination to an apostle. So an apostle ordained this guy, ordained this guy, ordained this guy, and we literally have this evidence today. The Catholic Church can prove apostolic succession. Church of England cannot. The Episcopals cannot. So even if they said they believed exactly like we believe, it wouldn't be true. So maybe George Washington was realizing the Catholic Church was the true church that it claimed to be, and history proves that it is, and he didn't want to take the false Eucharist in the Church of England. I mean, that would make sense if we could prove this Jesuit archives are true, that when he was on his deathbed, he went into a Catholic church and converted. But either way, he was a great Christian, and he was a great man. He was so loved by the American people, they wanted to make him king. Literally, politicians went to him and said, we want to make you king, and he turned it down. In fact, the king of France, I believe, I could be mistaken, said, if George Washington turns down being king, he's the greatest man that ever lived. Because he knew that once men get power, it's so hard to let go. We see that today with Joe Biden. He does not want to let go of this power. Once men get power, it's very hard for them to let go. They just crave power more than money. Power is more coveted than money to men. So George Washington was a great man. And he gave us a great republic, constitutional republic, that no one can take our rights away. Obama said he wished the Constitution wasn't so stubborn, because he would change some things about America he didn't like. He tried to change us into a socialist nation, but it failed because we had that Constitution blocking him. But Ben Franklin, after completing writing the Constitution, when he was walking out, some woman came up to him and said, so Mr. Franklin, what is it? Are we a monarchy or are we a republic? And he said, we're a republic if you can keep it. Because it's not hard to keep, it's not easy to keep. Right now we see so many forces, socialists, communists, trying to pull us into an evil system of government. You even have some Catholics saying they want a monarchy, But we are a republic, one nation under God, and the only king is Christ. And thank God you're an American. Fight for this republic. Honor great men like General George Washington. But always Stay Catholic.